Why is it that the more we chase happiness, the more it seems to slip through our fingers? We live in an age of unprecedented abundance, with more opportunities, more information, and more comfort than any generation in human history. And yet, so many of us walk around with low-grade, persistent hum of anxiety, a feeling that we're not quite enough, that we're somehow falling behind in a race we don't remember signing up for. We scroll through highlight reels of other people's lives, curated galleries of perfect vacations and flawless families, and a quiet voice in our head whispers, "Why isn't that me?" We're told to think positive, to visualize success, to want more, be more, do more. And this relentless pursuit of the positive has, paradoxically, made us acutely aware of everything we lack. It's created what one author calls the feedback loop from hell. You feel anxious, and then you start feeling anxious about being anxious. You feel guilty, and then you feel guilty for feeling guilty. You get angry, and then you get angry at yourself for getting angry. It's a spiral that feeds on itself, a mental prison built from the very tools we were told would set us free. This profound contradiction, this deep-seated frustration that permeates modern life, is a question that drove a man named Mark Manson to the edge. He wasn't a psychologist or a tenured professor. He was a blogger, a traveler, a young man who, like so many of us, had swallowed the cultural Kool-Aid and found himself choking on it. He became obsessed with figuring out why all the self-help advice felt so hollow, why the relentless demand to be happy was making him, and everyone he knew, so miserable. His journey wasn't an academic exercise. It was a desperate search for an exit. And what he found wasn't another list of feel-good platitudes, but a series of blunt, uncomfortable, and life-altering truths. To understand the power of Manson's discovery, you first have to understand the man he was before it. Picture a young man in his early 20s, fresh out of college, armed with degree and the unshakable conviction that he was special. He believed he was destined for greatness, that the world owed him something extraordinary simply because he existed. This wasn't just youthful arrogance. It was a deep-seated entitlement, a toxic byproduct of a culture that tells every child they're a unique snowflake who could be anything they want to be without ever mentioning the blood, sweat, and tears that such a life requires. He spent years adrift, a ghost in his own life. He chased highs and fleeting pleasures with a desperate intensity. He moved from city to city, country to country, believing that a change of scenery would somehow magically transform the person who inhabited it. He dated dozens of women, seeking validation in their affection, only to find himself feeling emptier when it faded. He tried to start businesses, concocting grandiose schemes that were long on ambition but short on effort, and then grew bitter when they inevitably collapsed. He was, in his own words, a FCK hoarder. He gave a FCK about everything, and therefore about nothing of consequence. He cared deeply about what a stranger on the street thought of his clothes. He cared intensely about the opinion of a girl he'd known for 3 days. He was obsessed with the idea of being a rock star, a visionary entrepreneur, without being willing to endure the soul-crushing rejection and relentless work that defines those paths. He was living a life defined by avoidance. He was avoiding commitment, avoiding vulnerability, avoiding the quiet, terrifying work of building something real. His life was a highlight reel of exotic locations and temporary thrills, a carefully constructed distraction from a gnawing void at his core. The crisis moment wasn't a single dramatic event, no car crash or public meltdown. It was something far more insidious, a slow, dawning horror. After years of globetrotting, he looked in the mirror one day and realized that despite all the passport stamps and a long list of experiences, he was the exact same insecure, unhappy person he'd been when he started. The scenery had changed, but the man had not. He had tried it all, the positive thinking, the affirmations, the relentless pursuit of passion, and he had nothing to show for it but a collection of fading memories and the same old problems. This rock bottom wasn't a fall. It was a realization that he'd been standing still the whole time, just running in place really, really fast. It was from this place of profound frustration and disillusionment that his true quest began. He had to unwire everything he thought he knew about happiness, success, and what it means to live a good life. His first major breakthrough came not from a self-help guru or a spiritual text, but from a foul-mouthed, booze-soaked ghost of a dead poet. He stumbled upon the work of Charles Bukowski, a man who was a complete antithesis of everything modern culture celebrates. Bukowski was a degenerate gambler, an alcoholic, a womanizer, and a chronic loser for most of his life. He worked a dead-end job at a post office for decades, writing in his spare time, fueled by cheap whiskey and self-loathing. He never tried to be anything other than what he was. A broken man who found a strange solace in putting his ugliness onto the page. He was rejected by nearly every publisher for years. He didn't care. He wrote not to be famous or loved, but because if he didn't, the words would burn a hole through his gut. When he finally found success late in life, he didn't change. He remained the same cantankerous old bastard. On his tombstone, he had a simple epitaph engraved, "Don't try." This wasn't a call to apathy. It was the purest expression of his philosophy. Bukowski's genius wasn't in overcoming his flaws. It was in his radical, unapologetic acceptance of them. He knew he was a loser, and he was okay with it. He didn't give a FCK about being a literary giant. He just wrote. And in that not trying, in that raw, unfiltered honesty, he became one. This was a key that unlocked the first door for Manson. He called it the backwards law. The relentless pursuit of a positive experience is, in itself, a negative experience. But paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is, in itself, a positive experience. Think about it. The more you desperately want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you feel, regardless of your actual bank balance. The more you desperately want to be loved, the lonelier you become, because you're constantly seeking a validation that can only come from within. The more you try to force yourself to be happy, the more you focus on all the reasons you aren't, plunging you back into that feedback loop from hell. Manson realized that the secret wasn't to eliminate pain or struggle. Life is struggle. Problems are constant. The solution was not to wish for a life without problems, but to find better problems, problems you actually enjoy solving. This is the subtle art of the title. It's not about becoming an indifferent sociopath who cares about nothing. It's the exact opposite. It's about choosing with extreme prejudice what few things in your life are truly worthy of your FCKS. It's a conscious reprioritization of your attention and energy away from the trivial and towards the meaningful. He saw this principle played out in the tragic story of Hiro Onoda, a Japanese soldier stationed on an island in the Philippines during World War II. When the war ended, he didn't believe it. He thought it was enemy propaganda. For 30 years, he continued to fight a phantom war in the jungle, living in squalor, surviving on stolen food, occasionally killing local villagers he believed were enemy combatants. He gave AF**CK with immense dedication and discipline about the wrong thing, loyalty to an empire that no longer existed. His struggle was immense, but it was meaningless. He had chosen his value, but his value was built on a delusion, and this revealed a deep complication in the don't try philosophy. So you accept pain. You choose your struggles. You narrow your focus to what truly matters. It's a powerful first step, but immediately begs a terrifyingly large question. How do you know what truly matters? How do you choose the right struggles? Just accepting suffering isn't enough if you're suffering for a stupid reason. Onoda's story proved that. This led Manson to a deeper, more uncomfortable truth, one that directly attacks the core of our modern identity. The second great principle he uncovered is this: you are not special. Our entire culture is built on a foundation of what he calls toxic entitlement. From a young age, we're bombarded with messages that we are all unique, destined for greatness, and that we deserve to be happy and successful without exception. This constant diet of self-esteem Kool-Aid has created a generation of people who feel they are owed a great life, and who then crumble into anxiety and depression when reality inevitably fails to meet their extraordinary expectations. The perfect, devastating illustration of this is the story of Dave Mustaine. In the early 1980s, Mustaine was the lead guitarist for a young, up-and-coming band called Metallica. Right before they were about to record their first album and hit the big time, the band fired him, unceremoniously. They woke him up one morning, handed him a bus ticket, and sent him packing. As he sat on that long bus ride home, watching his former bandmates drive off to a life of fame and fortune, he seethed with a rage that would fuel the rest of his life. He vowed to start a new band, a band that would be so successful So huge that Metallica would forever regret their decision. And he did it. He formed the band Megadeth. They became one of the biggest, most legendary metal bands in history, selling over 25 million albums and touring the world to sold-out arenas. By any objective measure, Dave Mustaine was a colossal success. Yet, in a television interview years later, a middle-aged Mustaine broke down and wept. He confessed that, despite all his fame and fortune, he still considered himself a failure. Why? Because Metallica had sold over 180 million albums. He never managed to eclipse them. This is the poison of entitlement in action. Mustaine's entire life was defined by a terrible metric for success: be more successful than Metallica. Because that metric was external and dependent on the actions of others, it was a source of perpetual misery, a goalpost that kept moving further away. Manson realized that the quality of your life is not determined by the quality of your experiences, but by the quality of the values you hold and the metrics you use to measure them. Bad values are things like pleasure, material success, always being right, or staying positive. They are poor guides for life because they are often superficial, outside of our direct control, and rooted in denial of reality. Good values, on the other hand, are things like honesty, vulnerability, creativity, and responsibility. They are better because they are process-oriented, grounded in reality, and entirely within our control. You can't control whether people like you, but you can control whether you are an honest person. You can't control whether your business succeeds, but you can control your work ethic and your willingness to learn from failure. This led him to a crucial distinction: the responsibility/fault fallacy. Society teaches us to conflate these two ideas. If something bad happens to us, we believe someone must be at fault, and we feel we are only responsible if we were at fault. But Manson argues this is a trap. You may not be at fault for genetics that make you predisposed to depression, but you are 100% responsible for how you choose to manage it. You are not at fault for being cheated on, but you are responsible for how you process that pain and move forward. Taking responsibility for your problems, even the ones that aren't your fault, is the single most empowering act a human can perform. It is the moment you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the author of your life. This is where all the pieces click into place. The journey from aimless entitlement to this point was a series of jarring revelations. First, the backwards law. Stop trying to be happy, and instead, accept the inherent struggle of life. Second, the problem of entitlement. Recognize you are not special, and that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your values, not your achievements. But how do these two powerful ideas connect? The grand, unifying synthesis, the aha moment that ties everything together, is a profound realization that you are always choosing. Every moment of every day, whether you are conscious of it or not, you are choosing what to give *CK about. When you scroll through social media for an hour instead of working on your project, you are choosing to care more about mindless distraction than about your ambitions. When you get into a screaming match with a customer service representative over a $10 fee, you're choosing to value being right over your own peace of mind. When you lie to avoid an uncomfortable conversation, you are choosing to care more about short-term comfort than long-term trust and integrity. There is no escape from this. Even the choice to care about nothing is still a choice, a value in itself. The problem is that most of us make these choices on autopilot, guided by the shitty, inherited values our culture has fed us since birth. We care about what other people think because we've been taught that social validation is the ultimate prize. We care about accumulating more stuff because we've been told that material wealth equals happiness. Manson introduces a character to deliver these harsh truths: the disappointment panda. The panda is a superhero nobody wants. He doesn't tell you can fly. He tells you that your project will probably fail, but you should do it anyway. He doesn't tell you that you're beautiful. He tells you that physical attractiveness fades and you should cultivate deeper qualities. The panda's wisdom is that pain, struggle, and failure are the essential ingredients of meaningful life. Growth comes from suffering. Courage comes from facing fear. Compassion comes from experiencing loss. The grand synthesis is this: the purpose of life is not to find happiness. Happiness is a fickle, fleeting emotion, a poor star to navigate by. The purpose of life is to find the struggle you are willing to endure, the problems you enjoy solving. A truly fulfilling life is not a life without problems. It is a life with good problems. The joy of a scientist is not in having all the answers, but in the frustrating, obsessive, beautiful struggle of chasing a single question. The joy of a parent is not in having a perfectly behaved child, but in the chaotic, exhausting, deeply meaningful struggle of raising a decent human being. This single, powerful idea changes everything. It reframes our entire existence from a desperate flight from pain to a deliberate, conscious selection of it. It asks not what do I want to enjoy, but the far more important question, what pain am I willing to sustain? Because who you are is defined not by the pleasures you seek, but by the struggles you are willing to embrace. The journey we've just taken, from the anxious abyss of modern life to this profound and empowering redefinition of it, is more than just a clever set of ideas. It's a blueprint for a more authentic, more resilient, and more meaningful existence. It began with Mark Manson, a man lost in a sea of his own entitlement and false expectations, and ended with a series of hard-won truths that have the power to liberate us from our own self-imposed prisons. The path is deceptively simple, but it demands a fierce and uncomfortable honesty. It starts by recognizing the backwards law in your own life. Stop chasing happiness. Stop trying to force positivity. Instead, just allow yourself to be. Acknowledge your anxiety, your sadness, your anger without judgment. Let them be signals, not sentences. Then, you must take radical responsibility for your life. Divorce the concept of responsibility from the concept of fault. Your life is your own, and while you cannot control every card you are dealt, you have absolute control over how you choose to play the hand. This is not a burden. It is the ultimate freedom. Next, you must become a ruthless interrogator of your own values. Put them on trial. Are they serving you, or are you serving them? Are they based on external validation, being liked, being right, being rich, or on internal, process-based metrics like honesty, creativity, and compassion? Have the courage to discard the values that are making you weak and miserable, even if they are comfortable and familiar. And finally, choose your struggle. Ask yourself what problems you want to have. What kind of pain are you willing to endure for something that truly matters to you? Your answer to that question will define the entire trajectory of your life. Understanding this is a first, crucial step, but knowledge without action is just trivia. The real change happens when you start applying these principles day after day in the small, seemingly insignificant moments that make up your life. It happens when you choose to have that difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. It happens when you choose to go to the gym instead of hitting snooze. It happens when you choose to let go of a petty grudge. If this journey resonates with you, if you feel that quiet hum of recognition, then I invite you to make a commitment, not to me, but to yourself. Subscribing to this channel is more than just clicking a button. It's a declaration that you're ready to stop sleepwalking and start consciously choosing the life you live. It's about joining a community of people who are tired of the superficial and are ready to engage with the deep, difficult, and ultimately beautiful work of building a meaningful life. The secret, you see, isn't about caring more. It's about caring less, but caring about the right things with every ounce of your being.